Come on in, sit back and relax. You're listening to episode 171 of the WealthTech Today podcast. And I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, the founder of Ezra Group Consulting. The content of this podcast is designed to share thought-provoking industry analysis, best practices, in-depth discussions, and lively conversations all around wealth management technology. This is the last episode of the year, so it must be our best of episode. We ran the numbers to find the top 10 most downloaded podcasts from this year, and we're thankful for all of you for spending so much time listening. That includes everyone around the world, as we have people downloading from over a dozen countries, such as Canada, India, the United Kingdom, Germany, Ireland, Australia, and Hong Kong, Singapore. Our crack podcast team has pulled a clip from each episode of the top 10, and I recorded a short intro to each for you. If you enjoy these clips, I'd recommend going back and listening to the full episodes because there's a ton of terrific content there. If you are an executive at an enterprise wealth management firm and you're having issues with one of your software platforms, then you need to call Ezra Group. Our consulting team has decades of experience with all aspects of wealth management technology, data, and operations. Whether you're looking to optimize an existing system, revamp it, integrate it, or replace it entirely, Ezra Group is the first call you should make. We help firms exactly like yours make the right decisions regarding their technology for smooth front to back office operations. Go to EzraGroupLLC.com for more information. I'm going to squeeze in a quick housekeeping note before we start. Be sure to subscribe to WealthTech Today wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss future episodes. And the outlets where this podcast is being distributed has grown over the years and now includes not just Apple Podcasts, but also Amazon Music, Audible.com, and Spotify. And now, let's kick this thing off. Our first clip is from episode 138, Orion Advisor Buys Redtail Technology, that we recorded in April. My special guest was my good friend and colleague, Kristen Schmidt, founder of technology consulting firm RIA Oasis. In this clip, Kristen and I discuss why it's so difficult for advisors to change their software and what this acquisition means for competitors, both in the portfolio management and CRM spaces.
If we were to look at other platforms out there, although it's not apples to apples, nothing is, let's look at Tamarac and Envestnet, for example. The Tamarac platform for independent RAs, they don't have a risk tool. So they're missing that, but they have their own proprietary CRM built on the Microsoft Dynamics platform, right? And have forever when Envestnet bought Tamarac years ago. So the Orion platform having CRM, portfolio management, which includes reconciliation, performance reporting and billing, a trading and rebalancing tool, a client experience, financial planning, and not only risk assessment, but you're right, prop gen, along with other pieces of Orion because of those other acquisitions like TAMP. It's big. They've covered all of their bases with this acquisition. And I think we also need to talk a little bit about Redtail in a sense of, congratulations both to Eric Clark and to Brian over at Redtail, because they both built amazing companies that have a lot of the same synergies. One of the biggest integrations is Redtail and Orion from the beginning, and they've been doing it from the beginning. And in Brian's 19-year career of having Redtail, he's built an entire industry level CRM. I think the numbers spoke for themselves, right? When we were looking at some recent surveys, Craig. And so Redtail is very well highly adopted. And we see that in the IBD space, in the independent broker dealer space, as well as in the RA marketplace. And so the idea that Redtail has a long longevity of client success, user success, and innovation. This is a great ad for Orion. I'm happy for everybody.
It really puts Orion in play for a lot of clients they may not have had before. And also it kind of changes the marketplace. As you mentioned, Tamarac has had a CRM for many years, but it wasn't highly adopted. Whereas this move might change the nature of how RIA platforms operate. Whereas if Orion can be successful integrating Redtail to become Orion CRM, if they rebrand it as Orion CRM, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And the integration is really tight and seamless and feels good to advisors, and the adoption rate keeps increasing rather than decreasing. It could change how their competitors look at them and say, well, hey, they're doing this. We need to do the same.
I agree, but I also think that if I were an advisor today who has heavily adopted Redtail but uses Black Diamond or uses some other portfolio management tool, I would wonder where this leaves me. I also think that WealthBox is in a very strong position, although this is an acquisition and it's very positive, happy for everybody. My agnostic sense comes out. But WealthBox, in my opinion, is literally the only CRM out there that is independently owned and operated without any, with the intention of being a CRM only, right? And there can be an opinion here, and I'll hear it from all of my clients, which is, well, Redtail, now you're not a CRM. Now you're part of a bigger platform. So what about us? What about those CRM initiatives? I think I could speak on both sides of that coin. One being Redtail has such a large company and people and support behind it, and all of that is coming with the company. So I think that that's good for Orion, where it can still stand alone, although it's under the umbrella. But to that point, it does take away advisor choice at some level. You and I keep talking about how advisors want choice. And now you can make that choice. At least we're not sure actually if you're going to be able to buy Redtail after close, second quarter. We're not sure if you'll be able to buy Redtail independently. That hasn't been released. Again, we're an hour into the release, but it hasn't been said yet.
The way advisors do wealth management, the way advisors do portfolio management can be very different. And the way they feel about it often decides which platform they go with. When they're, Tamarac does portfolio rebalancing and management in a very different way than Orion's Eclipse does, which is a very different way than Black Diamond's rebalancer. So it's sometimes, even though you're there, you just can't get them to switch because you don't do things the way they do things. They don't want to change.
That's exactly right. And I also think that there are some firms who choose to have a Maserati of a portfolio management platform and more of a Volvo in a sense of a CRM. And then there's other firms who choose to have the Maserati as the CRM. It's a Salesforce, it's something much larger, and then maybe not have much of a gusto of the portfolio management system. But I'll tell you this, the portfolio management systems in all of these platforms are very well defined by, are you financial planning centric or are you investment centric? And a lot of that is driving platform decision. What does my financial planning tool look like? What do my outputs look like? You're a icon and influencer on Twitter. You've seen it all, one-page reports, and everybody's talking about what's being released. I do have to mention, since we're live when this info just came out, that Altruist and their integration with Right Capital got buried in this, and they should get a lot of credit in a sense.
Right Capital.
Yeah, and poor Jason, right, over at Altruist, because I think that was a great integration and one of the first over there that's really impactful on the financial planning side for Altruist. So with that said, I think that there are a lot of these pieces and the unknowns can be impactful. A CRM, you need one no matter what to run your business, no matter if you're investment centric, financial planning centric, or mix. So is this going to drive higher adoption of the CRM? Absolutely. Absolutely it will. And it's going to make some of the competitors probably wonder what's next, right? Again, just to lay it out, Orion now has bought Redtail. Franklin Templeton owns Advisor Engine, AKA what used to be Juncture CRM. SS&C Advent, which also is Black Diamond, is underneath them, owns the Salentica platform for CRM, which has a Microsoft Dynamics platform and a Salesforce platform. WealthBox, owned by Star Labs, which I think, Starburst Labs, excuse me, but I think that, they just got some amazing influx of money to innovate, which I think is going to be impactful to see how they become, competitive. But again, not owned by any larger platform. And it's the only one out there besides any of the Salesforce overlay companies like Practify, Accelerate, and so on.
Let's do a quick rundown of market share. So according to the Keatsis Advisor Tech survey, Redtail is the leader with 33%. WealthBox 22.7%. Salesforce 13.3%. And then I think the next one, I lost my page, sorry. Then Salesforce 13, but the next one is other at 9%. So just
That's a little scary, especially for a CRM implementer like myself.
Yeah, other.
The
Then
other categories.
Juncture, which is now Advisor Engine CRM, is 4%. Tamarack CRM 2.7%. Firm Proprietary 2.5%. Microsoft Dynamics 2.5%. And then it just falls off the map.
Yep.
Right. So what does it mean for these companies? Oh, let me just switch over to a T3. T3 has some different, way different numbers. They've got Redtail at 62%, so almost 100% higher, which could be because they get more broker-dealer enterprise respondents to their survey. InvestNet number 2 at 16, WealthBox number 3 at 13, Salesforce 6, Salesforce 11, Juncture 4, Advise-On 2. So what do these numbers mean? Clearly, Redtail is the leader. Orion's bought the leader in CRM, and it means as you said, WealthBox is the only major CRM available. That's
Yeah,
standard.
but I want to be fair on that for a little bit. So number one, if we're listing adoption, and again, some of that survey, which we've reviewed and disclosed, I think does hit primarily that independent RA market, isn't necessarily representing the IBD space in a large way, but that's okay. We've gotten enough data and they're doing a great job. A couple things to note though. Redtail was founded in 2003, which means they're on year 19. Okay. And congratulations to Ryan McLaughlin on that. So WealthBox, if we were to look at the historical data from the T3 survey or others, WealthBox has made increasingly large jumps to get to that 23 in half the time. They're 8 years behind. WealthBox was established by Starburst Labs in 2014. So sometimes when we look at data, and we also look at longevity, and the same thing's happening with Right Capital. Okay, we've talked about that before, where Right Capital is considered the newbie, but is the fastest growing adopted financial planning tool in the market. So I think we need to give that a little bit of credit, that WealthBox the climb is sometimes just as impactful as those final results. Now, to Redtail's credit, once you earn an A, you got to keep it. Your numbers can always go down just as much as they can go up. So everybody from WealthBox and Redtail has been climbing predominantly, but I think those big step climbs from companies that are newer to the market is impactful and something to consider. There's also been areas of the CRM market where certain companies are deciding to be or not be. I'll give you an example. Email, it's a big one, okay? Redtail currently has an outsourced solution for email hosting through a company named Zimbra. Will that stay, will that go with Orion? Remember, Redtail isn't just a CRM. They are a document management system for storage. They also have their Speak component, which is for texting and messaging and chatting. They have so many other components to the CRM that Orion has a lot to unravel as to how it all fits. And until I see otherwise, I'm guessing it's all coming along for the ride, but how that all instrumentally fits into their platform will be interesting.
Next up is a clip from episode 141, The Anatomy of 401k Trading with Dave Goldman, Chief Business Officer at Pontera, formerly FIEX. This episode was published back in May.
So I realize why this is important, but for people listening who maybe don't understand, can you explain why this functionality, this trade, being able to trade held away assets is so important to advisors?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to advisors because it's important to their clients. And if you really think about what happens, most of the country today is no longer dependent on defined benefit plans or pensions. Those have gone away. So the primary means of retirement savings are in clients' 401ks and 403bs and defined contribution plans. Now, because these are held off platform for most advisors, it means that they're really not a part of the advisor's purview in helping their clients. There's a lot of studies. There's some that talk specifically about management of 401ks. There's a lot that talk about the value of an advisor. They both peg it to about 3% per year net of fees as the benefit that the advisor can provide to a client. When you look at that compounded over 20 years, this can be an additional 75% growth for a client up until retirement. What happens, unfortunately, is that because advisors oftentimes cannot manage these as part of a overall portfolio, these accounts get defaulted into a fund or a number of funds when the client signs up for their 401k and doesn't get regularly reviewed and doesn't get looked at and doesn't get managed and doesn't change with the client's lifestyle and risk tolerance and existing financial situation. So they underperform the market over time. And really what's important for the advisor and for the client is to make this part of the overall strategy so they can create that benefit for their client. And so their client doesn't have to worry about, am I going to be okay in retirement, knowing that their trusted financial professional has been shepherding this account for them during their regular engagement. So really important for the end client to see the benefit of management of these accounts as part of a strategy. And of course, for advisors that are focused on serving their clients, that are fiduciary, and that are always looking to do the right thing, that's why it's so important for them as well.
It is amazing how long we've gone. I mean, this is not a new number. These 401ks will have it being the primary means of retirement savings with a large chunk of investors' savings stored away in these plans. And we really had no way to interact with them except manually, where the advisor looks at them and goes, okay, well, I don't like this holding, change it. That he's got to trust the client to go log in, find the way to do that, and do the rebalancing themselves.
Yeah, we actually see advisors taking two approaches on these accounts. So that's quite a common approach, which is if you bring me your statement when it's convenient, at the end of the year or when we get together next, I can take a look at it and I can give you some recommendations. And then my hope is that you're doing something about it. That's a very reactive approach from the advisor standpoint. They're trying to help, which is nice. And we can talk about some of the compliance implications on doing that as well. But it's not a full service solution, right? It's a reactive approach. There are other advisors, and we see this quite a bit, that actually one at a time will take their clients' credentials and log in and trade the accounts. Now, from the advisor's perspective, if they're taking all of the right steps, if they're claiming custody and they're going through surprise custody audits and they're securing client credentials, this is a process that we're seeing very commonly in the industry. The client wants help with the account. They're basically permissioning their advisor to do this. It becomes a very cumbersome manual process for the advisor. It brings a lot of risk to the advisor from a cybersecurity element because advisors are typically not SOC 2 certified. They typically don't have chief information security officers to kind of monitor how this works. And they're not built for this, right? So although it's great that they're doing this to help their clients, it creates a lot of direct liability for them. And what we're finding is that outsourcing the ability to kind of conduct that entire, the ability to conduct the entire security audits and InfoSec process and secure trading is something that they'd prefer to offload to us versus figuring out and trying to do themselves. But there's policies. The SEC has policies and procedures in place on if you are going to take credentials and if you are going to trade these accounts, this is what you need to do. And here's how you need to subject yourself to surprise audits and what that looks like as well. So it's happening today at quite a significant scale.
The next most downloaded episode of 2022 was episode 127, $1 million worth of platform consolidation advice from Kevin Adams, General Partner, Head of Business Solutions Development for Edward Jones. This episode went live back in January. And here's a bit of social media trivia. Kevin and I have 630 mutual connections on LinkedIn. That's a lot of overlap. And in this clip, Kevin is sharing tips for evaluating enterprise software vendors. I really love to hear from broker-dealers, RIA aggregators, TAMPs, RIAs, about how they pick vendors and what their methodology is and where they feel their strengths and weaknesses are. So give it a listen.
Now, one thing I know you're good at, and I've seen you do this, and when you're judging at conferences, judging demos, you're very good at seeing behind the curtain, or at least kind of peeking behind the curtain if you can, because the demos always look good, right? They're only showing the best of the best, and they're only showing the stuff that works. So what advice can you give to other firms that are getting demos how can they kind of peel the onion a bit and see, is it really working the way they're telling me it's working, or is there something behind the scenes that's not working right?
Once you get past the demos, you have to go through, take some of your use cases, take some test data, take some dummy data from your firm, and you actually have to run it through their system and run it through the process. It may not be the identical real world use case that you'd have your advisors using, but it needs to be close to it. So that's one, actually testing the system out. Two, talk to other clients. Have a deep discussion with clients that have been on the system, been using it for a while. Listen to the successes, listen to the opportunities, listen to the challenges they've dealt with in the platform. I think those two I've seen skipped by firms time and time again, but they just pay off in the longer term before a decision of purchasing something, without really trying to put it through some semblance of paces or learning around how it's performed or how it's worked with a competitor.
So true. We often refer to that as user acceptance testing, that you need to build out that test plan and run. Even though the vendor tells you it's going to work, you can't trust them because this is your business, and you need to, as you said, run the data through, even if it's just a sample, to make sure that it works the way they say, and also define what it means to accept that. And what's your exit criteria? It's got to do this, this, and this, and here are the things we expect. Have you seen any issues around that where you're doing your UAT and it's not working well, and how do you work with the vendor to get that resolved?
Of course, I've seen that.
I know you've seen
I think
that's why I asked that question.
I think of, I'm going to go away from the functional side for a minute. And an area that a lot of people don't always talk about or maybe think about in advance coming to closing the UAT is really the non-functional side. Performance calculations, performance of the system, uptime, responsiveness. So when going through that final stage you talk about of UAT, that's really around the functionality of the system. But the non-functional side is often either forgotten or not paid as much of attention to. And in this day and age, when you need quadruple 9 uptime for these systems, because billions of dollars are flowing through them, that scalability, reliability, robustness of these vendor commercial, most of the time, SaaS, cloud-based hosted solutions really needs to be tested thoroughly.
Yes, the non-functional requirements are often overlooked to the expense of the functional requirements, because the functionals are in front of your face. It's easier to see those than the non-functional.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about interoperability, back to integration, when you're doing platform consolidation, you often have a choice. Sometimes it is a choice, of a vendor, which one you're picking. Sometimes it isn't. If you're acquiring another firm, oftentimes the acquired firm's software gets nixed. But if you have a choice and you're picking and choosing, how do you define which applications get integrated, which applications get replaced?
That's going to vary so much depending on the business itself. I think, and I'll take the last piece, which applications get replaced. Some of that starts with the overall just architecture of the application. Is it legacy? Does it run on a modern stack? Is it something that maybe not as cloud-based today? Is it going to be easy to move it into the cloud? Is it secure? Is it performant? And those will help you make that decision. If you're talking about, acquiring another firm where you're inheriting a technology stack, you could spend a lot of time trying to modernize a platform, and you have to balance that versus saying, we're going to replicate this functionality into something new. That something new could be an internal custom build. That something new could be another vendor solution. So I think that's a really important piece of it. And I wouldn't call that functional or non-functional, but really just the underlying architecture stack. How modern is the platform itself from a technology perspective?
So when we're talking about the platform consolidation projects and how to support them and make them more, give yourself a higher probability of success. One thing you mentioned is the data models and the data architecture. So how can you go in a little bit more detail on how a well-designed data architecture supports platform consolidation projects?
I believe it starts with understanding, and I touched on this earlier, what is the data? Where did it come from? How is it being used? So really the authoritative source of it, making sure that it's curated well, it's managed well, you're not making multiple copies of it. Other systems are now using it, writing to it. We're not really sure where the authoritative source came from. You know, was it derived data? So hence understanding the depth of the calculation and why that calculation was used and the output. It's not just about the data and the systems or how they're being used, but the audit mechanism of understanding if something went wrong or there was a question about a calculation or a trade within the system, being able to understand that whole lineage of the data to be able to recreate that scenario to either validate what happened was actually right or try to understand what went wrong.
That goes back to your earlier comment about a common vocabulary, which is also, I think, can be described as a data dictionary, and being able to build that data dictionary so you know which data is coming from the source, which data is derived, which data is calculated, and without that changes over time. You have these slowly changing dimensions over years or more, where the data slowly morphs. Nothing big, nothing major, where it's enough to get people concerned, but slowly morphing over time. And you wind up with a completely different data set than you had when you started out 7 or 10 years ago.
True.
So the common vocabulary also helps with data cleanliness. Can you talk a little about specifically when you're consolidating multiple platforms, that why is data cleanliness important?
I think I touched on it in the last answer, but that cleanliness is important. You're managing money, you're rebalancing a portfolio, you're placing a trade, you're understanding performance of an account or a portfolio or a specific security. That data is everything that's going to define why you're doing something or how you're doing something, and making sure you're doing it right. So hence why all large enterprises the last 5-10 years have taken data so seriously, with data strategies, data architects, beefing up their data engineering, data stewards. It's become such an important factor in financial services and albeit investment banking, capital markets, the sell side, buy side, asset management, wealth management. Data is one of the data, and understanding the cleanliness is one of the most important things that we have to focus on as a firm, or in my role as a technologist.
So we're running out of time. I wanted to squeeze in one more question. When you're consolidating platforms, and we mentioned earlier about replacing platforms or integrating platforms, and sometimes you don't have a choice and sometimes you do. If you're integrating multiple vendors, what's some advice you can give firms about that process and how to make it a smooth offering, so that in the end your interfaces and you're getting a best of breed, but you're not suffering from the consequences of having different vendors all fighting to get things done?
Yeah, I think, and I'll start with the large commercial managed account or advisory vendors. They need to partner with other firms that may be competitors, so some co-opetition, to provide a more robust offering end to end for wealth managers And we talked about this via those well-defined interfaces for best of breed components. And the example I would use is you could have vendor ABC, which may have a robust tax optimization engine. Vendor EFG might be best in class from portfolio construction capabilities. They need to work together on their APIs, on the data integration of the product. So I think about wealth managers could go out there and pick and choose from the imaginary managed account app store, so to speak, to implement the best platform that meets their advisors and clients' needs. And that's really talking about that hybrid-based solution where it might not be build it all yourself. It might not be just buy one solution and try to force it into your needs. So doing a lot of customization, it's really picking and choosing the best solution and being able to work together. And then from an experience perspective, not just the systems communicating or the underlying data, but that the experience is fairly cohesive for the advisor that's using the system.
Our next clip comes from episode 134, Healthy Client Data Infrastructure with Don McHenry, Senior Product Manager at Morningstar by all accounts, which went live in March. I asked Don about comparing data aggregation vendors. And as I mentioned in the clip, it's hard to compare them. We do a lot of research at Ezra Group, and it's different. We compare every different type of software that advisors use. And data aggregation is a highly used application service, but it's difficult to compare them and know who is better or worse. It's very opaque. So that's my question to Don. I'm going to take a listen right now.
One thing that I found is difficult when it comes to data aggregation vendors is comparing them. Very difficult to look at the output because it's not like there's a report I can just run to show me which one's better. It's something you have to run over time, looking at hundreds or more of different data sources under different conditions, different times of the year, times of the month. So what have you found when you're comparing yourself by all accounts to other vendors? Where are your strengths and weaknesses?
Sure. I mean, kind of like I was mentioning before, in general, like when selecting a vendor, you want to understand, what market is that aggregator committed to? What use cases are they enriching the data for? Is it for payments? Is it for credit decisioning? Is it for investment purposes? Is it for spending? Do they cover the right sources for you? So those are all really important questions to ask when selecting a vendor. One of the other things that really helps set by all accounts apart, of course, is the fact that we are a Morningstar product, right? So really, the aggregation and engagement solutions that we can deliver with use of the Morningstar ecosystem is really greater than a sum of its parts. So we have the ability to collaborate across teams within Morningstar that serve a whole cross section of the financial services industry. So products that serve the investor, products that serve the enterprise, products that serve the advisor. And we have a lot of great internal partners that use our aggregation service in these products. So we can actually see, how our data is being used, what works, what doesn't work, where do we need to invest and make enhancements. So again, from our perspective, we're really committed to the investor, the advisor, and the platforms that support them. We certainly have great external partners as well where we can get this feedback, but it's a big benefit to have this in-house. And also, as part of the Morningstar ecosystem, there's all sorts of great tools and data available to help us really create a flywheel effect with our products. So, certainly we have customers that use our aggregation and other Morningstar services and kind of integrate those together themselves. And one of the things that we're investing in, now and in the near future is kind of delivering even more turnkey aggregation solutions that involve other Morningstar data and other Morningstar analysis capabilities to provide really a level of depth that differentiates us amongst the other aggregators.
And back to differentiation, that's what it's about. Can you talk about, let's talk about something fun. So talk about the buzz we're hearing. What is going on? There's so much talk about acquisitions and more mergers. We have the Plaid attempted acquisition. What are you hearing around the buzz in the industry?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a lot of buzz. I think you mentioned the Plaid attempted acquisition. I think at the time the valuation was 5 billion, which was quite a surprise for many. And I think their valuation has even increased many-fold since then. So really a lot of this buzz is attributed to kind of two main areas. So competitive pressures and advancements in technology. So from the competitive perspective, fintechs are really accelerating digital transformation for older wealth management enterprises. So what I mean by that is that customers can really use free services to see a 360-degree view of their financial lives. They expect this now with their advisor, their money manager, to have these same capabilities, because if they don't, someone else will, right? So when an advisor uses aggregation to gain access to all of their customers' data, that really makes a highly compelling and customized and personalized experience that they can deliver. And then on the kind of advancements in technology side, so aggregation is no longer really just about an overview of accounts, right? It's how is that data being enriched and how is it made actionable for use within the enterprise? Everything from simple net worth delivery to end users to suitability, business intelligence, customer engagement and marketing. And now with open banking, customers, or consumers' data is portable, right? So it belongs to them. They can share this between apps, and as an aggregator now, we are at the intersection of all this, right? We're the intermediaries that bring all this data together between stakeholders, and we grow with the ecosystem.
There were reports a while back of banks shutting off access to third-party data aggregators or screen scraping their websites, and they didn't like that. Is that still happening? And if so, how are you dealing with it? I imagine the open banking APIs link into that somehow.
Yeah, certainly. So, we've engaged, like I said, we're live now with open banking APIs with a number of institutions, and we're engaged in building connections with others. And, part of the deal here is that, we're getting off the website. We're not aggregating from the website any longer when the open banking APIs are available. So there's certainly, quite a bit of operational, internal migrations that need to happen and collaboration with our customers to make that work. But, typically, institutions are giving us a deadline, right? Okay, here's access to our open banking APIs. Great. We have a direct relationship with you, and now it's time to move to that channel. And we will essentially block the website connection, at this date, right? So we're definitely seeing that, and we're working together with the financial institutions and abiding by their needs for that. And then there's also kind of the more kind of rogue situations that you'll see where they'll implement certain technologies that just simply block, aggregation altogether, or make it very difficult to aggregate accounts and kind of erode the user experience. In those cases, there's two things we can do. One is we, attempt to make our technology as adaptable as possible and have the best, messaging to our user about connecting accounts and setting up accounts. And then the other option, of course, which is always, what we attempt to do is connect with the institution, establish a relationship with them, and discover alternative means for collecting data.
Cool, very cool. So one other thing that we're seeing on our end is the concept of aggregator of aggregators. It seems like it's gaining momentum at some firms, especially larger firms, larger broker-dealers that can afford to build out their own technology, or other vendors that are building tools to connect to multiple APIs or multiple aggregators. Are you seeing that as well? And how do you see that changing the way aggregation is used?
Yeah, certainly. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind for that is that, it's really important for the aggregator to own the whole aggregation experience. Ultimately, it's about delivering a compelling user experience, keeping the client engaged, and by owning the whole, from the connection to the enrichment to the delivery of the data, you're providing more value than someone that doesn't provide that service can. There are certainly some advantages of aggregators in terms of being able to kind of point and shoot at different institutions, but at the end of the day, it's not them that has control over the technology, the connections, and being owning that yourself is a major benefit.
can you share some of your product roadmap? What's coming down the pike for file accounts users? What to look forward to?
Sure. Yeah. So we're really focused on three areas. Those three areas are investor engagement, advisor ROI, and workflow automation. So from an investor engagement perspective, I mentioned this ecosystem of Morningstar capabilities we have, and our data is really plug and play into this ecosystem. One of the things I failed to mention earlier when I was talking about our enrichment is not only will we, map all positions that we aggregate to their accurate ticker and QSIP, we actually also map them to the internal Morningstar ID. And that really unlocks a lot for our customers. We have many customers that are also Morningstar data customers, and they can really easily correlate the aggregated data with the Morningstar data. So we're now, taking the initiative to make some of these services a little more turnkey for our customers. Adding things like, if you think about a customer aggregating their portfolio through our services, hey, we can add the portfolio risk score, we can add the sustainability rating, and this is great because investment behavior really has changed for younger investors. So if you're trying to go more downstream with your users or reach a larger audience, they're looking for more editorial content. They want to make sure that their portfolio, aligns with their risk and their values, understanding the holding and sector kind of exposure that their portfolio has. And these are all things we can really deliver off the shelf with all these great Morningstar capabilities we have. So certainly investing more in that in the realm of investor engagement. Also in that realm, financial wellness tools. So high level kind of view of financial health married with guidance. So we have a great team here of behavioral scientists that are really helping us innovate and drive these tools and bring them to market. So they're less focused on being in the budgeting weeds and take more of a holistic approach at financial wellness. So what I mean by that is, how much income are you allocating towards debt versus day-to-day consumption versus, the future? And is that balanced according to your goals and, maybe our recommendations? How is your savings from a short-term and long-term solvency perspective? So are you prepared for an emergency event, losing your job? How close are you to financial freedom if you're, more an older individual closer to retirement? So those are really exciting financial wellness tools. And then also on the investor engagement side, we're committed to delivering, the broadest set of data connections for investors and advisors. So, that means connecting to new asset classes, right? So cryptocurrency is something that is in high demand, right? So we have customers that need access to these sources because their clients have this data, or in some cases, there's turnkey asset management platforms that advisors are beginning to use. So we've engaged in relationships with them to deliver direct feeds to provide that data downstream to platforms. On the advisor ROI side, so really trying to highlight the interoperability of our data. So not only can we serve the portfolio accounting use cases, but we can also really deliver advisor and investor alerts and insights from our data. So some examples might be, hey, there's idle cash in this investor's, portfolio. Let's open an account. I can engage with that investor and open an account. Their, risk exceeds the risk profile. That's a discussion for diversification. They've changed their job or their income has changed. Hey, let's update your savings and contributions. And, these types of insights and alerts can really help, give the advisor more time to offer their client trusted, personalized advice in a way that a robo is unable to do. So the third was the workflow automation and onboarding. So investing in some tools and capabilities there to help enterprises, facilitate asset transfers and onboard clients quicker, and excited about that as well.
Our next clip comes from episode 154, Embracing External Trends in the TAMP Space, with Daniel Needham, Global Chief Investment Officer at Morningstar, that was published in August. I asked Daniel for the background behind their decision to switch out the underlying technology that was running their TAMP, and they replaced it with a company called SmartX, and the other vendor they used for over 10 years. So it's a very difficult decision to make, and there's a lot that goes into that decision to swap out the core technology that's running your TAMP, or really any system in a wealth management company. So really good information here from Daniel. Take a listen.
So recently you announced you're switching your backend technology to a new provider. Can you talk about that and what were the primary factors in that decision?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, we've had a platform for quite some time, our TAM for some time, and we've seen the needs of advisors evolve, and the ability to deliver flexibility and choice we think is more important than ever. And we've had great partnerships supporting the TAMP, but we felt from a technology perspective we needed to enhance the underlying chassis of the platform, especially from a UMA perspective. We have multi-strategy accounts or UMAs now, but we really felt like we needed to partner with an API sort of technology first provider. And we have Morningstar Office, which is a portfolio accounting engine as well. So we've got some back-end capabilities that we were really leveraging a third party for. So we've made the decision to overhaul the middle and back office of the TAMP. And so we're using Office as our sole portfolio accounting and performance calculation engine. And we're working with SmartX to be our UMA and middle office provider. So working with them, API based connections, they'll be powering our UMA, our model manager, our rebalancer. And so really excited, Evan Rappaport and John Pincus, just great partners. I think they're really focused on innovating, leading with technology, disrupting maybe the market a little, and look, with Aaron and Alex as well, their head of tech and head of product, they're just a great team to work with. So like-minded organizations, and we just couldn't be happier with the partnership.
Yeah, we've been talking about SmartX for a while, long before they kind of popped on the radar with everyone else in 2020 or 2021 when they started grabbing a lot of assets. But for years, no one was really talking about them except me, because I'd seen what they were doing and I liked their technology. And we're experts in UMA and managed accounts. So when I see a vendor with a new take on UMA and sort of really, as you said, technology first provider, I want to talk about it. So we've been talking about SmartX. We're really happy you guys are working with them. And we don't have any relationship with SmartX and in terms of a monetary relationship, but we're just happy to see vendors that we like work together and doing cool stuff.
Yeah, we're really we're excited about it, and we think the collective strengths of the organizations, like we've really come together. That's the great approach with their API first approach, is that you can really build something that's right for your workflow, and we're going to be bringing some really cool features and functionality out. And I think the SmartX guys are they're a 10-year overnight success. They've been building that tech for some time, and it's super exciting.
Yeah, and it came from other tech, right? They started out in the hedge fund world, which is it's a lot more pressure, right? When you're in the hedge fund, things are changing. Of course, wealth management is pressure as well. You got to be right and correct. You can't have bad data or inaccurate. But hedge fund is at a different level of, So I think coming from that tech background, that client segment gave them a good base for moving into wealth management.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we see that in their ability to calculate performance real time, and it's precision that you need, I think, and that's the way the industry is going, and I think they're leading it.
Indeed. And so I'd like to kind of dig a little bit more into how you make this decision, because we work with a lot of firms like Morningstar on the tech side. We work with a lot of your clients, broker dealers, enterprise RIAs, and it's often an issue for CXOs, presidents of companies like yourself. When do you switch? How do you know that it's time to switch? So you mentioned UMA need, you mentioned APIs, but how did you know that, hey, now's the time we have to switch? What was your decision point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's an easy answer to that question. I think strategically we could just see the way the industry was going, and we could see that that with advisors' expectations aren't declining, I would say. So, advisors, they're humans. They spend a lot of time in modern apps and using different sort of digital applications. And I think when they move into the sort of, the finance tech space, they don't change their expectations. They just get disappointed. And so, we could see that. And so for us, we really felt like we needed to improve the digital experience for our advisors. And that was the key. We could do, Jeff Bezos talks about, embracing external trends, and that generally, if it's a strong external trend, and you don't embrace it, you're probably going to be left behind. And for us, we could see that, and so that was really the catalyst. We needed to improve the experience, the workflows on our platform. And look, we looked at all of the major providers. We went through a comprehensive due diligence and evaluation process, and we signed confidentiality agreements with all the vendors, and they were great. And we were this was a bona fide search. We wanted to look for the best partner. And there's a lot of great providers out there, I would say. So it was not an easy decision, but we felt on balance, SmartX were good because we liked where they were in their business life cycle. They're still in that sort of innovator, sort of pilot it, nail it stage, and that's great because we want to build something that's really well suited to our advisors and our clients, and we want to innovate together. I think when firms get really large, they turn into large professional services firms that have cookie cutter playbooks, and so we felt like SmartX wasn't that. And so it was a comprehensive process. It's a risky, moving back end and middle office. It's risky, it's a lot of work, but we got a great team, and we've got some experience doing some pretty complex projects of this kind of nature. And so I feel really confident. We're really on track, things are going well, and our goal is to just make sure there's no disruption for our advisors and their clients, and we feel good about that.
Yeah, we've seen that as well, working with a lot of different vendors from large to small, that success breeds lack of innovation, right? You tend to innovate less as you get larger. And in order to get that level of success, you have to become a legacy provider. It takes a number of years to do that. And now your technology becomes old. You become beholden to your biggest clients, the legacy clients, and they start to drive your roadmap rather than innovative ideas driving your roadmap.
Yeah, that's right. The engineers that are closest to the pain point or the problem, that's where the innovation comes from, solving real problems. But, once they get to a certain scale, the engineers move out and the MBAs move in, and then it's about, scaling and turning into a software product. So.
And that's a wrap. You made it to the end of the episodes of 2022. Thank you for listening. Before I go, please go to EzraGroupLLC.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, updates, tasks, all kinds of things. You will not be disappointed. Thanks for listening. See you all again next year.